Yo, chat, I'm back with another one. I'm not gonna lie, it took a little bit because had to get all my resources set up, and I just this video in particular I knew was gonna take a little bit, so I did end up writing a script at least for the scaling. The intro is unscripted, right? That's why you might hear me saying intro is unscripted, but the scaling is scripted because I knew for this video it was going to be probably one of my longest and one of my most explained ones. So the topic that we are doing today is Monster Kokushibo versus Tanjiro. This is definitely a topic that I didn't expect I'd be doing so soon, but it was like I just wanted to hop into it and get it started just with that, right? So enough of this introduction. Let's get right into the topic at hand, right? So as usual, we're going by the way I usually scale: AP, speed, hacks, and we're gonna start off with Kokushibo first. So getting into his AP scaling, let's go over Monster Koku scaling first. Since it's a little less complicated, 13th form Tanjiro, which is pretty funny actually. Alright, Monster Koku actually has no real AP scaling, so what I will do is just use LS Kokushibo's AP scaling for him. It's probably the best route to go with his AP. LS Kokushibo in his first appearance is able to heavily damage Sanemi Gyomei right from the get-go. He unleashes slashes and he unleashes slashes that almost cut Sanemi's hand off if it weren't for Gyomei, which even with Gyomei's assistance his fingers still got cut off. Kokushibo continues to go on an onslaught of attacks from being able to damage Sanemi more and more. Skipping a little more forward, we get to when Muichiro is back into the fight, where he's able to reach in distance of Koku, but also get his leg cut off in the process, and almost severs Muichiro's carotid artery, which is in his neck area. When Koku is backed into a corner by the Demon Slayers, he lets out a fearsome howl since he was backed off into his, deathbed because they backed him into a corner and they were about to cut off his head, but he lets out a desperate moon crescent slashes in his attempt to survive, which in result damages Sanemi and cuts Muichiro's body completely in half and cuts Genya's body in two pieces. And I don't think actually damages Gyomei. It probably did, but in the scan I was looking at, it just didn't look like he took damage, just like he was pushed back. Um, so that's really all I wanted to go over. I conclude with his AP scaling, or at least the relevant AP scaling I can use for him, that his AP would be second to someone like Muzan due to his destructive power, although there is no proof that Monster Koku's AP got any stronger. So theoretically, it would stay the same moving on to his speed scaling, right? Um, Now here's where it gets very interesting because during the fight with Gyomei, Sanemi, and Muichiro, Kokushibo's speed is never enough to truly perception blitz Gyomei. He does perception blitz Sanemi once he first goes into LS, but not Gyomei. Let me explain why Monster Koku has different speed scaling than LS. And this is due to the fact Kokushibo perception blitzes Gyomei and Sanemi when they try and charge at him again in his monster mode, where he can now move so fast where Gyomei can't track him. Now, throughout the entire fight, Gyomei might have trouble keeping up with Kokushibo's attacks, but he never has a problem perceiving or at least somewhat keeping up with his movements. But once Kokushibo achieves this state, he is then able to blitz Gyomei and Sanemi very badly to the point they don't even know where he went and eventually turn their backs to see him behind them at that point. We can just assume he's an entirely different speed tier, as that would upscale him further than his LS form. So I'll conclude that for his speed scaling, that he would just be a tier above Gyomei and Sanemi and should be above the drugged version of Muzan that they were fighting. Since he's not really able to blitz them, or he's not able to blitz Gyomei at least, right? So let's go quickly get into hacks. I'll go over his hacks. Kokushibo's hacks consist of the Demon Slayer mark, see-through world, and being able to, of course, regenerate his head, as he can only die by the sun or being exposed to sunlight or red blade. Now that I'm fully done with Kokushibo scaling, let's get on to 13th form Gochiro Kamado. The GOAT. let's hop into his AP scaling right off the bat, starting off with Muzan fight and the countdown to sunrise. Once Tanjiro awakens from his slumber in the final fight, he is able to immediately sever Drug Muzan's arm by off-guarding him. Although, to note very quickly, the version of Tanjiro that was fighting was a more fatigued and drugged Muzan from that point on. Or, my bad. The drugged Muzan that he was fighting was more fatigued than the Muzan that the Hashira were fighting, right? I apologize for me just saying. During the fights, Tanjiro is able to connect moves on Muzan, but because no actual significant damage or notable damage to him from the strikes at that start of the battle, we at least know that he can scale above that drug Muzan's durability. Now, I did just butcher my words a little bit, right? So basically, what I'm saying is, since Tanjiro was able to sever Muzan's arm at the beginning of the fight, although during the fight he's not able to do any significant damage or notable damage to him, we at least know that Tanjiro can cut Muzan's limbs off, which would scale him above Muzan's durability at that point. That is the only thing I can be certain about fully, so I won't make any headcanon assumptions that are backed up by no proof or evidence. We can now go into speed scaling, which is a little more interesting than his AP since I was able to go over it so fast, right? So Tanjiro's speed once he wakes up is at least able to react to the same move Drug Muzan pulled against the Hashira that took them out. Although even though it was recent, this Muzan would still be unquantifiably weaker than his previous self. But nonetheless, Tanjiro is able to keep up with this Muzan's attacks, of course, until he falls behind them more. He fights due to fatigue, but even with that, due to Muzan getting slower, Tanjiro can still avoid his hits to not take damage or at least not die due to them. At one point, Tanjiro using Fire Chariot is able to blitz Muzan once, but Muzan just says it's hard to hit him due to him jumping around all over the place. And then after that, he finally succumbs to fatigue, and then Obanai comes to save him. The conclusion I have came to with is Tanjiro's speed is very hyper relative with the drugged aging version of Muzan's speed, as they're able to dodge and tag each other multiple times. And now for lastly, we'll quickly just go over his hacks and abilities since it's not that long, right? So first we got See Through World, the Demon Slayer mark, Red Blade, Selfless State, and I guess you could put 13th Form in there. And as well as Tanjiro's heightened senses, like smelling, his smelling senses. Um Now that I'm done scaling both of them entirely, I'll go over my summary of who's stronger between them. If we're talking about AP and speed, Monster Kokushibo takes them both with no doubt. His AP is more destructive and can do way more damage than Tanjiro, especially with the length and range of Kokushibo slashes. And I also feel like Kokushibo just has more speed since Tanjiro goes hyper relative with a weaker Muzan that was not even able to blitz Gyomei. And why I'm saying that is because when all the Hashira are smacked away, we just assume they got blitzed, right? Which is the case for some of them, but Inosuke states that Gyomei and Giyu protected him, meaning he could perceive the attack and defend this, would also just be consistent with the fact that Gyomei and Giyu took the most damage out of all the Hashira, even losing limbs, and Monster Koku was able to perception blitz Gyomei when he was less fatigued. Um, I also go up to back this up with the fact that Zenitsu and Inosuke were the first people to get back up, which would just be more consistent to Gyomei and Giyu limiting the damage done to them. That's all I had to say. So I just think that Koku is a tier faster than Tanjiro and even at Muzan since he's able to blitz Gyomei at that. Of course, See Through World could help Tanjiro, but I just think that difference in stats are too much, so Monster Koku should take it over Tanjiro as he should have the speed to just outright blitz Tanjiro, not even allowing him to get attack in. But I would love to hear what you guys have to say further in the comments, because again, this is a very, very strange topic, I'd say. People think it's controversial. I think regardless of what way you look at it, Monster Kokushibo would inevitably beat Tanjiro. I don't think Tanjiro should be able to get a hit in, but that's just my thoughts. It really depends on how you interpret it. That's all I have to say for everything. Thanks for listening, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.